Hey, Salespreneurs. I am stoked to be bringing another episode with you with Garrett Campbell, who's going to show us how you can make 15 grand a month or more working for yourself as a remote closer. Garrett also runs the Closing Bible, is really active on Twitter, YouTube. I'll link his stuff in the show notes if you want to give him a follow. But quick announcement, before we get into all of that, I'm dropping a bi-weekly newsletter starting this Saturday. So be sure to subscribe to the show notes. I am on a mission to find as many sales reps turned entrepreneurs as possible. And this is just a really cool way for me to include you on that process. You're going to get a curation of salespreneur stories, my favorite content, upcoming events, and more. So you don't want to miss it. Go to the show notes, click subscribe, and you'll get those every other week. That being said, Garrett, let's get into it. How you doing, man?
Let's get after it. How you doing? I'm doing phenomenal, man.
Dude, what I love about podcasting is so crazy just to connect with people from all over the place. Like typically my guests that I've met with have been from my LinkedIn network, mutual connections, people I already know. But you live in Chicago, I live in Utah. We have literally zero mutual connections. And we're mostly connected just because I saw one of your YouTube videos and I DM'd you. And so it's cool that we can connect that way. But for those who don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Garrett Campbell. So I own the Closing Bible and HireSalesReps.io. For HireSalesReps.io, that's where online service-based businesses doing over 100 grand a month can come to get commission-based remote setters and closers from there. And then what the Closing Bible is where we take sales reps that have crushed it in different industries, whether it be tech sales, whether it be door-to-door sales. Maybe they're running their own agency and they just want to shut it down, or they're actively in the high ticket space, and have them transition into high ticket sales. We have a bunch of training to help them navigate that transition. And then we get people placed guaranteed, or they get a full refund within the span of about 31 days. About 20 is our average that we aim for. We've trained and placed over 250 sales reps over the past 2.5 years, scaled multiple different businesses to 8 figures by working with their sales teams. And we've placed a couple different businesses in some cool Inc. 5000 businesses as well. So
wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I've read through your reviews, went through your website a couple of times, and it's cool. So you're a salesperson turned entrepreneur, now helping other sales reps essentially turn into entrepreneurs every single day. I'm curious how you got to this point, though. You've been doing this for 2 to 3 years. You came from a sales background. Can you kind of describe to me where you were in sales and what led to you starting this up?
Yeah, absolutely. If we take it like way, way back, I think I'm just always like a little entrepreneurial. Freaking 4th grade, I was like mowing lawns and like knocking on doors, being like, "Hey, I just mowed your lawn. I don't know if you saw. Like, you want to pay me?" So I was always like a little entrepreneurial. But as far as like actual like sales stuff, in like high school, I sold supplements a little bit. I was like a typical gym bro. And then when I got to college, I was poor, like most college people. And I was like, how do I make money? I'm like from the small, like rural town. And where I went to college was in the middle of Illinois. And a lot of the kids were from Chicago. So they were always wearing Yeezys. They were always wearing, the newest Jordans and stuff. And kids in my school wore boots. I was like, what is this stuff? Like, this is interesting. And then I basically found like all these sneakerheads usually go to actual people to like get their sneakers, and all their people were in Chicago. It was 2 hours away. So I accidentally kind of became this like sneaker plug person where I was like flipping shoes. I didn't really realize there was like sales ability to it. I was just trying to pay rent because I didn't have any money. And funny enough, the girl that I was dating back then, who is now still my girlfriend and actually my business partner as of a couple of days ago, which is very exciting. Cool. She basically pulled me into this like sales training thing on Zoom, which is now I know is like a webinar where he's like trying to sell. But he's like, "Hey, this sales guy, like, I don't know, is interesting. Like, maybe you'll learn something. I know you're entrepreneurial. Maybe you'll like this or not." And I was like, okay, maybe this will help me sell some shoes. And he was talking about selling these online services for like 20 grand through Zoom on 10% commission and making like $2 grand a pop and cranking out like 10 of these calls a day. And I was like, hold up. I don't have to meet people at a police station with cash to buy these expensive shoes. And like, maybe they're fake, maybe they're not. Like, I don't have to drive a couple hours to go meet these people. Like, this is way more hassle-free than what I'm doing now. This is interesting. It turns out the guy actually ran a sales agency. So I got connected with him and asked him for a sales role. And this was, keep in mind, 5 years ago, where the term high ticket like wasn't even kind of a thing. I didn't even know
what's high ticket sales. Can you just like define that real quick?
For sure. So most people think high ticket sales is just like selling an expensive thing. I want you to think of it as more of like its own industry, right? So there's a lot of these, you may call them like SMBs that are making like, a couple $1,000,000 a year with like a lean team. And they're selling things that are like 5 to 20 grand. A lot of it could be like marketing services, like, hey, Facebook ads for restaurants, Facebook ads for chiropractors, or we do email marketing for e-com brands, or it's a coaching service to help you do real estate wholesaling or sell on Amazon, like coaching programs, right? There's a lot of these businesses that will run ads and get inbound leads on their calendar where you're taking like a 45-minute Zoom call for a financially qualified lead that's kind of warmed up and ready to go through a lot of really good like direct response marketing. And you're just taking those inbound calls on like 10% commission. So you're like a 1099 independent contractor solely on commission, basically taking calls with inbound leads. And you usually take 4 to 6 calls a day. 30%-ish close rate is pretty typical. So you make a couple $100 on every call that you close and do a couple of those a day. You can make pretty substantial money.
Okay, so that's what you guys started doing with your girlfriend after you were doing the shoe sneaker thing.
So not with my girlfriend. She just showed me this guy's training.
Okay.
And then I connected with this guy's agency where he had a bunch of these different, basically influencers that like sold stuff online. And we were an outsourced sales agency that were actually taking these Zoom calls, and these guys were just running the ads, and we did all the closing and then gave them back.
Okay. And so you would get 10 to 20% on these. That seems like such an easy thing. Like why can you make so much money off of something that's so simple?
I don't know. It's really crazy because I speak with, hundreds of sales reps every single month, and it's a bit abnormal. Right? Like I think most companies view hiring salespeople as almost like their marketing budget, where it's like, if it's a door-to-door rep, some tech sales, BDR, SDRs, where you kind of are the prospecting and you are the people that find the leads. Whereas here, the marketing finds the leads and you just do more AE stuff, which is just closing. I think some companies just became a lot more aware of the power of social media following, just like organically, or like running paid ads on these different platforms. And a lot of other companies just haven't really looked at that as a means of acquisition. And that's what makes these sales roles so different.
Yeah. And I've actually met with a few agencies that do very similar things where they run all the ads and then they have callers or closers on the other end that will go and set those meetings. And you'll pay a lot more for those leads because they're highly qualified, right? Because they've clicked on the ad, the person's qualified, you set the meeting. And so it's not like just paying for Google ads on a bunch of random leads that don't even know they clicked on your thing. These are like super highly qualified. And so it's easier to pay like a high commission out on that stuff.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. And so you're doing this high ticket sales. What led you to go and do it on your own? Was there a point where you saw an opportunity like, hey, I think I could do this on my own? What caused you to go and do that?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the last offers that I sold for, what I realized was the sales manager was actually managing that sales team, which was pretty small. We had it was like 2 setters, 3 closers. It was like 2 setters 2 closers when I started, 2 setters. So like 4 people total on the team, 2 setters, 2 closers. And then we ended up moving up to 5. But I noticed he was managing teams for like 4 different people. And he never reviewed one of my calls. We didn't even have like end of day reports. Like our systems were terrible and the business wasn't doing bad. We were doing like $250,000 a month in revenue. So nothing crazy. But there was a lot of inefficiencies with the process. And I came in, and for those of you who don't know, like we were helping businesses get capital in the peak of COVID, which was awesome. Getting SBA loans and heavy lines of credit, like a roofing business who doesn't have any capital and they want to buy 2 more trucks and hire 2 more crews to do more roofing jobs. Hey, I need $1 million so I can go do this thing, right? And most businesses will go to like one banker and they won't be able to get any capital. So like, my business can't get any money. I'll just give up and just figure it out. You know what I mean? We had a whole network of a bunch of different lenders. We'd help them get the capital. So like that was the offer. Give us $7,000. We'll pair you with the right lender. And then we would get an affiliate commission for sending these loan brokers the deal. And it was a blast. So I was doing that and a couple different other services, but that was the main thing. We were selling that. And the point was there's a lot of inefficiencies in the process. So I went from a 30% close rate month 1 to 35% close rate month 2, to a 40% close rate month 3, to a 50% close rate, to a 60% close rate. And last month, we had the last month of being on that offer, I had a 76% close rate, which I know sounds bonkers to people who don't talk to inbound leads. I understand that. And it was just because the way they were selling was flawed because the sales manager didn't put any time and attention into the team. So I was just a nice guy and I wanted the reps to be able to help me and like give me ideas on how I could sell it differently because I just am a freak about studying sales calls. So
Mhm.
I was teaching the reps what I was doing and it helped them a ton. So their close rates jumped. And then they were teaching me stuff. And like we were just going back and forth. And I kind of helped. It was almost like a lead closer is now what the title actually is. And I didn't realize it. So I helped the team go from 200 grand a month to like 800 grand a month in the span of 6 months or so being there. And they spent more on ads. The business did other things. But a lot of it was taking the close rate from 20% to 50, 60%, helps a ton to a business's bottom line. And I got frustrated with the business, to be frank, because I'm kind of doing the sales manager's job. How many other sales teams like have a piss poor sales manager or just bad sales reps or like whatever? So I was just tweeting as I was doing this for 6 months on Twitter, like, hey, I
Mhm.
one thing for this one closer that was having this problem, and then his close rate jumped, or this is how you can turn a DQ'd lead into 3 different referrals, or just little bitty nuanced things that I was realizing. And I grew a bit of a following, and then pretty soon I was getting DMs from a bunch of different business owners, like, "Hey, could you review my sales script? Can you review these calls for me? Can you run my sales team meetings? Can you do this?" And I was just deleting the DMs because I was making 25, 30 grand a month. Um, just ripping Zoom calls all day. I was like, why anything else? This is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but eventually I was like, there, because, I got commission on my closed deals. That's it. So I built a lot of enterprise value and, a lot of revenue
Mhm.
for this business and basically didn't make anything aside from my commission. So I was like, what would happen if I got paid for doing this for other businesses now that I have this as like a really killer case study? So I just started saying yes to basically everything in my DMs, whether it was training up a rep or training up a founder on how to sell their stuff or placing a closer or a setter in someone's business or running sales teams. And basically what I did for a bit was manage a couple different sales teams on RevShare, similar to that other sales manager, because I met up with him and saw how much money he was making. So that was, how I stepped from that first sales or that last sales role to the kind of doing my own thing, freelancing a little bit.
So I'm really curious about how you grew via Twitter because I've spent a ton of time on LinkedIn. That's where most of my network and my connections are.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's similarities or how you see that translate because I feel like LinkedIn is a very corporate type
Right.
and there's a lot of rules. You don't get as much reach. And it's also harder to speak very openly and candidly about thoughts or ideas or things that you're working on. Whereas with
Yep.
Twitter, the thing I love about there, you can go there and get a million different ideas and people are very open. But I
Mhm.
also like, I haven't spent much time trying to grow there. Like, how were you able to grow your connections and build a business through Twitter?
Dude, yeah. Like Twitter is LinkedIn without the corporate culture and like the formality. Like you can say out of pocket shit on there and like no one cares. It's kind of
Yeah.
like work's over. I'm here to have a little fun, but I'm also highly educated. I make a lot of money. Like here's some stuff that's working. You know what I mean? So it's a very lax environment. And yeah, you just, say stuff that gets attention. So is the question how I grew on Twitter?
Yeah. Like what helps you grow the best on Twitter?
Yeah. So a lot of what I was doing was really just like documenting my day. I'd be like, hey, I tried this one thing on a sales call and it went horrendously. And like a couple of things that like blew up pretty well. Where like the craziest, I wrote a thread on like the craziest objections I've ever got. And like, when you get leads from ads, although most of them are pretty qualified, you get some interesting characters that show up on a call. Like just some wild objections that I got. And it was like the top 5 objections I've ever gotten. And one guy said like, I can't do it because my kids got vaccinated and like COVID and just went on this whole rant for like 5-page text. And I was like, all right, dude, you shouldn't be a client anyway. It was crazy. So
Yeah.
little stuff like that went viral. And then I do Twitter spaces every day, 3 p.m., Monday through Friday. So I'd get a bunch of these new followers and they're like, who's this Garrett guy? And then I'd do Twitter spaces with a bunch of sales guys or different business owners would be like, hey, I'm having this problem. Or we just like hang out. So I think that's what made people like me enough to follow me and, take my advice, whatever.
Because that's basically just like a live stream, right?
Yeah.
You just go on spaces and anybody can join your thing.
Yep. It's nearly like Clubhouse, if you kind of remember what that is. They just adopted that feature. So yeah, there's
Okay.
like a host that can start it. And then there's a bunch of people that can just listen in, or you can request to speak. So there could be 100 speakers, there could just be one speaker, and then there could just be people that kind of bystand and just, listen in.
That's awesome. So you were posting everyday stuff, posting results, sharing tips, insights. All of a sudden you start building a lot of credibility. People want to listen to you. They join your Spaces calls. They start DMing you, and eventually you say yes, and you become a connector of people. And so can you help me understand what that looks like today? It sounds like you started off by just helping a few people one-off, but now you've created a whole business model of I have supply and demand. I have reps that want these roles, and then I have businesses that I can place them in.
Yeah. It really was just like through the freelancing, like a little bit of trial and error. And like I kind of just realized like what was actually most valuable out of what the reps wanted and what the business owners wanted. Because I started managing at its peak 4 different teams at the same time, which I realized was very overwhelming to do. But I had, one of my biggest successes was taking this marketing agency for insurance agents from like they were doing maybe 50, 80 grand a month, so like 600 grand a month, by building out a cold call team for them, which was not my normal thing that I would do, but we had a tons of success with it. And I built that whole thing out on rev share, and I was making a substantial amount of money from that. And to be frank, I got to a point to where what I realized was actually the most valuable for the business was just hiring the right reps that were self-sufficient enough where they didn't need a ton of management. And after working with other businesses, like just having a rep that's been there, done that I could just place directly into the business that didn't need a ton of help and a ton of additional support and like all that stuff is what the business owners wanted, is someone who has some experience who could close deals. And they're like, hey, dude, we can manage a team. Like we have systems, like we're fine. So only working with businesses that have good marketing, have good systems, have a good fulfillment process, know how to nurture and like build talent. They just need good bodies that can close. And then what the sales reps wanted were business owners that had their shit together, that they could just step in, make Zoom calls and make a substantial amount of money. So that's basically what I did is taking reps that have experience in other industries that are used to going through the trenches and putting in a little bit of work, whether it's door to door, whether it's corporate sales, taking a cold prospect to a $100,000 deal closed, and helping them understand this world of high ticket, where they have warmer leads and it's more inbound, and really play the volume game on just hitting $500,000 base hits a couple times a day, and placing them in these killer businesses that have great marketing.
You've become more of an agency as opposed to being a business, right? So you don't have to train all the reps. You're not managing hundreds of reps. You're really just connecting reps with opportunity, which makes it easier because you can run pretty lean, right? I mean, how big is your internal team?
We have like 14 team members.
Okay, and those work for you?
Correct. Yeah.
They're not like actual reps.
Yeah, these are like operations manager, client success manager, fulfillment team, like marketing guys, like sales reps, obviously.
Okay, and then how do you guys make money?
So basically on the B2B side, we charge $1,500 per closer, $1,000 per setter. And we could charge plenty more for that. I know the recruiter world is like charge 20% of first year salary. So that might be bonkers for some of you guys. We just play the relationship game. Like, I don't really care about charging $1 million day one with each business. I'd rather them only come to me for sales reps for the next 5 years and spend 100 grand with us, over the next 5 years. Like, that's really the game that I'm trying to play. And then on the other side of things, we charge $6,200 for sales training and guaranteed placement for sales reps. So what a lot of that entails is basically in the first month of service, we have guaranteed placement or you get a full refund. So people typically get placed within about 3 weeks. So what we take people through is a lot of understanding of the high ticket like acquisition process, closing someone from a cold door or, a cold lead or, whoever else they get leads and, whatever it is they sell is just largely a little bit different because there's like a 2 to 3 day sales cycle in high ticket, which probably sounds bizarre. And it's like, hey, we're taking a stranger to give me 10 grand in a 45-minute phone call in the span of 3 days. So although the lead is very warmed up and the marketing does a lot of the heavy lifting, that is still a very condensed time period to get someone to trust you enough to give you a chunk of change, right? And it's all like one call close stuff. So a lot of the training is around that. If you're a tech sales guy, you're probably not scared to drop big numbers, but it's probably a very analytical sale that's way less emotional. and you might have, 2-3 months for a deal to close with multiple decision makers, where this is like, how do we cram 3 months of trust building into 3 days? You know what I mean? If that 45 minutes, right? So different people with different backgrounds have, different problems that they might have as they step into this space. So we really work to unwork those kinks. We have like 5 mock calls that we run them through where they get approved, and then they get access to basically all the offers that we have access to. So we have about 40 businesses or so a month that are asking us for sales reps that are qualified, ready to go. And then we have a client success manager that basically connects them with 5-6 different interviews with a bunch of different businesses, and then they can choose the one that they move forward with. And then beyond that, we have access to all of their metrics that they fill out for us, and a call reviews channel. So we crank out call reviews, keep track of their metrics, and are listening to their calls, seeing what they're doing wrong and tweaking things. And then we have 4 times a week coaching calls as well on objection handling, doing role plays. Like we're nearly like an external sales manager in a way. So it's kind of a value add to the businesses that we're keeping tabs on the reps too, making sure they're crushing it, because we have 2 customers we got to keep having.
For sure. Well, and that's what I'm curious too. I hear a lot of these stories of, hey, come make 30 grand a month as a remote closer. And I think you see ads like that and it's got to be too good to be true. How do I know it's going to work? Whereas, I go work for a tech company or a W-2, and I know that I have a guaranteed salary. I have a guaranteed book of business. I have guaranteed leads and stuff like that. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable to,
of course, go
with some sort of agency and say, I'm going to go and risk it to make a little bit more, right? Yeah. And so do you have, I know on your website you have a lot of like success stories. Do you have any that come to mind of like an ordinary sales rep who is able to come in and double or triple their income just by doing remote stuff?
Absolutely. Alex O'Brien, one of the Ireland boys, the Irish boys love us over there. He was SDR that was doing a little bit of like small like SMB, like closing, like kind of doing a little bit of both of those. Making like $4K a month at like a cybersecurity, like, SaaS, like tech sales role.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, dude, I'm crushing it. Like I'm making good money for this business. Like here, I don't know exactly what it is, so I'm not going to put numbers to it, but whatever revenue he was closing. And I was like, dude, if you're on 10% commission, like you are in the high ticket space of like revenue, by the way, not profit, you would have made like, 30 G's, like 25 grand that month. And he's like, are you kidding me? So he came over here and we got him placed in like 2 weeks into this business where basically what they do is they help people scale Amazon brands. So they help people basically build brands on Amazon that have equity value that they could actually exit. It's like a $7,800 service. They do about $2.5 million a month as a business. They don't like me saying their name and stuff, but huge business, super successful in the Inc. 5000, all that jazz. And he started doing 18 grand a month within 90 days of being on that offer. And he lives in Mexico now and just kind of bounces around Latin America and, takes Zoom calls. So that's
how much effort does that take for him? Is he grinding like 70-hour work weeks, or is it a little bit more manageable?
It depends. I mean, it's just like I would presume any other sales role. It's like, you take more calls, you're going to make more money. So, usually that's taken about 6 to 7 calls a day that are like 45-minute calls. And then there's usually hour-long sales team meeting, maybe like 30 minutes or so of admin work, follow-ups, whatever. So probably, an 8-hour day. I think the beauty of things, because you are 1099, is he can organize his calendar, right? So if he only wants to take calls from, I don't know, like 10 a.m. to like 8 p.m. and he wants to crank a long day, he can. If he's like, I could go 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then just kind of screw around, afterwards if I want to. Like, obviously, you still work for the business even though you are 1099. So, like, you have to show up to sales team meetings. You have to do, admin work a little bit. You have to work your pipeline. But, like, there's a lot more freedom. So he can adjust the calendar. But, yeah.
Well, it's super relieving, too, when you don't have to do all the pipeline building. Because for a lot of sales roles, that's 70% of what you do is just trying to build pipeline. And it's probably the most draining aspect of it because you never know exactly how much is coming in. It's really hard to predict those things. But also, I guess I am curious too, because they're 1099, they're technically an entrepreneur, like they're technically self-employed. Have you seen stories of people where they come and do this, but then they're also able to build their business while they're doing high ticket sales? Like maybe they're starting their own Amazon business or getting into real estate or stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of, and that's the cool thing about some of the offers that you're selling is like, there's so many different businesses that you could sell for in this game. So like whatever
Mm.
your interest is, like we have a lot of people that are like long term, like I want to own a bunch of different real estate properties, right? So like we have this one cool offer where, hey, it's a $25,000 service where commercial real estate investors want like a call center for like lead gen for like commercial real estate properties they could buy. So you're closing real estate, like commercial real estate investors on a $25,000 package. We're like, hey, we'll build out a whole call center for you. So we have a guy doing that, makes $2,500 on every deal he closes, does pretty good numbers. And then he'll have a nice little 20K month. And then he's buying properties in like Ohio and Illinois and Missouri and like flipping like wholesale deals and then buying some rentals. And he's like, hey, once my cash flow gets to here with real estate, I'm just going to do what I want and just build my real estate portfolio. So absolutely.
That's incredible. I feel like that's the cool thing with sales is you can make higher income and then convert that into a business or some sort of other cash producing investments, which is why sales is such a great path for a lot of people, as opposed to, for example, like I wanted to be an accountant in college because I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how money works. And then I realized that accountants with a CPA master's degree make like between 40 and 60 grand a year starting. And I was like, I made more than that during college selling pest control door to door. Like, why am I going to take a pay cut to do something that's way harder, way more skilled when I can just do sales? And then I'll just go buy a business and hire an accountant later. Right. Yeah. So, I love hearing stories like that. But yeah, Garrett, just rounding us out, I'd like to, before I let you go, one last question. If you only had $1,000 to start a business, not doing what you're currently doing, what would you recommend somebody start?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for starters, to kind of round around the question a little bit, I wouldn't start a business with $1,000. I would just go get a sales role and go put 100 grand in the bank and then start a business because it's so much easier with more capital. But if we're assuming that is out of the equation, I would just manage like 1 to 2 sales teams on like a 5% rev share. There are so many marketing agencies that are terrible at sales that are great at marketing, and they have a great service. And these marketing guys are terrible. They're just not. It's not their nature. So there's so many 50K a month, 100K a month, little like boutique marketing agencies. Like I have a guy that I know that he just exited like a marketing agency specifically to chiropractors, right? So there's a lot of these businesses where, hey, we run ads for chiropractors, for doctors, for dentists, for insert any niche, for lawyers, you know what I mean? That are just not that great at sales. And if you could step in and say, hey, I'll take your calls for a little bit and manage and then build out a team for you on 5% rev share top line. I'm going to scale this business to 200 grand a month. I'll make 10 grand a month for doing this. And then I'm going to do this for four other businesses and get up to 40 grand a month and just build a small little team of, sales guys, sales managers that have a little bit of experience. And I can pay them out just a small fraction of what I'm getting paid out and scale this up with like 4 clients and get up to 40 grand a month. And I think that's good enough cash flow for like your first business to go build something else that is like has a little bit more longevity.
Wait, so say that again. You would go to different chiropractors and service-based businesses and just ask to like run their ads and book them.
So there's like marketing agencies that, like, for example, will be a marketing agency for chiropractors. Okay. I would go to the marketing agency and get a feel for like their whole business. And if there's inefficiencies in their sales process, say, hey, don't pay me a dime. If you're currently making, let's say, 50 grand a month, I don't want any money if I don't make you more than 50 grand a month, but everything north of 50K a month, I want a 5% rev share on all of the upside beyond that for the value that I bring to the business. And then I'll help scale up your sales team to grow the revenue of the business.
Oh, that's brilliant. I really like that idea. And what I like about it as well is you're not spending money on something. You're literally going somewhere and just offering almost a free service, which I think is really smart, because right now entrepreneurship through acquisition is a really popular thing, or buying different businesses. And I I tend to think that a lot of those are very risky because if you don't know how to manage a large business, even though you're running like an existing business and you might be a millennial and think that you're smarter than like this guy that's been running it for 40 years, that's not always true. And then you also bear the risk. And so it's like you take a $1 million loan, personal guarantee, that's on your head. But if you can start a business for essentially $0, which what you just said, right? Like if I go to a marketing agency, they already have everything in place. All I have to do is use my skills to say, if I can increase your revenue by X amount, I'd like a 5% rev share, do that between 4 clients. Because you're right, marketing agencies are really good with copywriting and really good with ads, but not so good on like the calls and like the back end work, where if I just said, hey, I bet you have 1,000 leads in your CRM, do you mind if I just call them and I'll book the meetings for you? They'd be like, yeah, I'll pay you for that, right?
Yep.
So
and I just, that's why I lean towards that in particular, is because I think if you don't have capital, like trying to buy a business with a chunky loan when you don't have any experience in that specific business is ungodly risky. And it's like, if you have time but you don't have money, I would leverage the time that you have by doing service-based businesses to increase the cash. And then you can put that cash towards, buying a business. Like if you're, working and closing all these different chiropractic agencies and you learn, hey, these clients do really well as a chiropractic business and these clients, because they're bad business owners, like, what are these good guys doing? Let me take this cash and buy a couple different chiropractic facilities. Right. So I think leveraging time when you don't have money is like your best bet, and you just got to grind your face off for a little bit to get your first 100K.
Yeah. Well, and I saw one of your tweets about that, about making sure you have 100K in the bank before trying to like go buy a business or taking on that risk. And I think it's super wise too, because, you really need a 6-month savings or a 12-month savings so that if things aren't working out, you're just super, super comfortable versus being cash strapped for everything. But yeah, that's great advice. Garrett, I appreciate you coming on and being a part of the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man.